Hello, everyone. This is the introductory session to Karnataka PU lecturer coaching program at Vallath. We know that Karnataka PU lecturer notification will come very soon. Everybody has started preparing for it. And lots of people are also preparing for Karnataka assistant professor exam. At Vallath, we have started classes. This is the first session. And in the course, we are going to do it in 3 phases. The first phase will be when we'll give you self-paced videos or recordings that you can watch. There will be full-fledged lectures starting from 7th of April. And in the few months after that, we will have intensive lectures. And what Vallath is known for is the amazing revision program that we have. It will also be there in this course, and that is phase 3. Vallath has a very scientific, structured way of approaching the syllabus for the exam. It's a time-tested approach based on educational philosophy and theories. At Vallath, we call it Fuse Out because we start with some fun, slow-paced overview where everybody will be equal. We will then move into the stress phase. Stress is intense. There we will have lots of core learning. And then by the end of that phase, you will be enabled. That is E, F-U-S-E. You will be enabled, you will be empowered, you will be able to answer questions, you will be able to get confidence. And then towards the exam at the end, it will be the outcome phase. Outcome phase means we will focus on exam style practice, and there will be model tests, intensive marathon revisions, and things like that. Now, the syllabus that we have has 2 papers. In the first paper, we have the background to literature. I will teach you a little bit of that today. Chaucer to Shakespeare, 18th century literature, Romantic period, Victorian period, modern period, and contemporary period. These are the topics prescribed under background. Then we will have modules like poetry, fiction, drama, then Indian writing in English, grammar, vocabulary. We will cover everything including grammar and vocabulary, and we'll give you tremendous practice. In paper 2, we have sentence types, sentence functions, writing skills, language functions, and reading skills. You must know that Vallath has a very strong language department. We have faculty, equal number of faculty in the language department also. You will be given practice in all this, don't worry. Now, there are prescribed texts in the PU syllabus, but I'm not going to teach you the text today. This is the introductory session. I'm going to give you a thorough overview. You know that when literature began, it began in the modern period or the early modern period. That is the beginning of modernity. Early modern period is another name for Renaissance. And it began with Chaucer. Chaucer is called the father of English literature. And in Chaucer's time, we have John Gower, William Langland, John Wycliffe. This being the Renaissance period, this is also the period when questioning of the Catholic Church came, Reformation came, leading to the Protestant Church. So there were many socio-political events that happened at this time, like the Act of Supremacy, which made Henry VIII the head of the church as well as the state. That came in 1535. Then during this time, Elizabethan period dawned. And this is the time when the defeat of the Spanish Armada happened, because of which England became very powerful on the sea. And the Elizabethan period is the real flowering of English literature. This is the time when the university with Shakespeare, Ben Jonson, and lots of major writers lived and wrote. The Renaissance period is generally considered to be till John Milton. In the Renaissance period, there was the influence of the Greco-Roman classical learning, which is why we have Greco-Roman period also important as an important subject under English literature. Before the Renaissance, there was a Middle English period. Chaucer was a Middle English writer. We have to study all the works of Chaucer. I can ask you some questions that you can answer. I will keep the chat box on Zoom open. There are students from the course attending the session on Zoom. People on YouTube can answer in their chat boxes. So, which is the first dream allegory by Chaucer? To which Lydgate wrote a response called The Complaint of the Lover's Life. Complaint of the Black Knight, or The Complaint of a Lover's Life, is a reply written by Lydgate to Chaucer's which poem? It is the Book of the Duchess. Which book of Chaucer was dedicated to John Gower? John Gower himself is a writer. It is Troilus and Cresside that is dedicated to Gower. Oh, moral Gower. Right. Pratiksha is answering. And what are the works of Gower? Gower wrote Speculum Meditandus in French, Vox Clamantis in Latin, and Confessio Amantis in English. Right. In the Elizabethan period, or before the Elizabethan period, in the Tudor period, who wrote very rough, rugged verse in books like the Book of Philip Sparrow? It is John Skelton. John Skelton. Right. Whose use of blank verse is called mighty line. Somebody used blank verse and it is called mighty line. It is Marlowe. Christopher Marlowe's blank verse is called mighty line. Who called Marlowe's mighty line, blank verse mighty line? It was Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson. Now, Shakespearean plays had lots of adaptations. Do you know the movie Shakespeare Wala? Do you know the author who got Booker Prize? This author also wrote the screenplay of Shakespeare Wala. It is Ruth Pravar Jhabwala. Ruth Pravar Jhabwala wrote the movie Shakespeare Wala. Do you know who is the author of Gertrude and Claudius? Gertrude and Claudius, if you remember, is based on Hamlet. It is John Updike. So we'll teach you all these things, don't worry. We'll have extensive classes based on your subjects, your syllabus, and you will know all these things in the course. This is only the introductory session in case you have forgotten, the topic. So, my dear friends, after the Elizabethan period, the Renaissance period came to an end in the 17th century. In the Elizabethan period, there was the flowering of arts and letters. After that, there is the Jacobean period, or the time of the post-Shakespearean dramatists. And after that, there is the period of the Civil War. In the period of the Civil War, a major writer who emerged is John Milton. John Milton is a major writer who emerged. And what are the two languages in which he wrote? John Milton wrote in two languages. They are Latin and English. John Milton wrote in Latin and English. Right. And who said, Milton, thou shouldest be living at this hour? Who wrote in a sonnet these lines? Milton, thou shouldest be living at this hour. It is Wordsworth who said this. Wordsworth wrote London 1802. okay, which is about how dissatisfied he is with England, and he's hoping that Milton will come back. Right, guys. Then after the Civil War period, there is the Restoration period. In the Restoration period, a main figure is Dryden, John Dryden. Was John Dryden a poet? Yes. Was John Dryden a dramatist? Yes. Was John Dryden a novelist? No. But he wrote prose works. He wrote other prose works. Right. Now, in the time of Restoration, there is comedy of manners. Is that true or false? Yes. Comedy of manners is a genre that began in the BCs. In Greek and Roman classical period, it began in the works of Menander, Plautus, Terence. And then comedy of manners took the form of restoration comedy. Comedy of manners took the form of restoration comedy. Who is the writer of uh, She Would If She Could? The Man of Mode or Sir Fopling Flutter? It is Etheridge. There are very easy codes that I will teach you. Imagine a bathtub full of ether. Why? Because bathtub full of ether? Because it is Etheridge, and his first book is The Comical Revenge or Love in a Tub. Inside this bathtub, one woman is laying. She would get up if she could, but she cannot, because the next play is She Would If She Could. And then a man with legs like M, he is coming and saving this girl. So it is M because man of mode or Sir Fopling Flutter. The Man of Mode or Sir Fopling Flutter. That is the next play by Etheridge. Okay, who wrote The Plain Dealer with the character Manly? It is Wycherley. The Double Dealer is by Congreve. We will help you to remember everything. Don't worry, it is going to be very easy. Now, after this restoration period, there is the period of neoclassicism or the Augustan period. Wit, satire, common sense, human nature, these are all very major features or very major focus of the Augustan period. The genre of the realistic novel began in the Augustan period. Is Daniel Defoe an Augustan writer? Yes. Daniel Defoe is a prose writer who wrote Robinson Crusoe, Moll Flanders. Very good. You have to study Moll Flanders in the PU lecturer syllabus. Do you know Moll Flanders is a picaresque novel? Which is the first picaresque novel in English? It is written by a university wit, Thomas Nash. Thomas Nash. Okay. In the 17th century or 18th century, which of these did metaphysical poetry flourish? Metaphysical poetry flourished in 17th century or 18th century? It flourished in the 17th century. Clear? Then you have to study George Herbert. He is a metaphysical poet. John Donne also you have to study. Then moving on to the neoclassical period. Who is the major poet of the neoclassical period? It is Alexander Pope. Major poet, Alexander Pope. Was Jonathan Swift a major satirist of this age? Yes. Jonathan Swift, who wrote Gulliver's Travels, that is there in your syllabus. Jonathan Swift wrote Drapier's Letters, A Tale of a Tub, The Battle of the Books. Who are the major novelists of the neoclassical period? Samuel Richardson, Henry Fielding, Lawrence Sterne. I hope you remember all of them. The end of the Augustan period saw the Romantic revival. The end of the Augustan period saw the Romantic revival. At the time of Romantic revival, there were transitional poets. Then there were Gothic romancers. Who is the Gothic writer who wrote Mysteries of Udolpho? It is Anne Radcliffe. Which is the first Gothic novel? It is The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole. Yes. Is Pamela a Gothic novel? No. It is an 18th century realistic novel by Samuel Richardson. Right. Is Frankenstein a Gothic novel? Yes. Frankenstein is by Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley. Is Oliver Goldsmith an Augustan writer? Yes. Oliver Goldsmith wrote one novel, The Vicar of Wakefield. Then he wrote plays, The Rivals. Sorry, that's by Sheridan. She Stoops to Conquer, The Good-Natured Man. Sheridan was his friend, contemporary. And Oliver Goldsmith was also a transitional writer. He also had romantic elements. When did Romanticism really begin? 1798 with the publication of lyrical ballads, isn't it? And do you know if Romanticism is influenced by the French Revolution? Yes, Romanticism is influenced by the French Revolution. In the Romantic period, who are the major writers? William Wordsworth, S.T. Coleridge, Robert Southey, Lord Byron, P.B. Shelley, John Keats. There was a major novelist who lived at this time, born in 1775. It is Jane Austen. Jane Austen. Which are the major novels of Jane Austen? First to be published is Sense and Sensibility. Then came Pride and Prejudice. Then came Mansfield Park, Emma, Persuasion. The first written novel, Northanger Abbey, was published along with the last novel, Persuasion. Do you want to know one code that I teach to remember the works of Jane Austen? Jane Austen wrote Northanger Abbey. It was written first but published last. After that, there is a code. Today also I was teaching it in net batch. SSPP MEP. Jane Austen wrote Northanger Abbey, and after that SSPP MEP. SS means Sense and Sensibility. PP means Pride and Prejudice. M, Mansfield Park. E, Emma. P, Persuasion. Okay, the novels are published in this order. 1811, 1813. Then 1814, 16, 18. 1811, 1813. Then 1814, 16, 18. So some code and all will teach you like this. And we will help you to make codes on your own also. After the Romantic period, there was the Victorian period. You have to study Charles Dickens, which is the novel of Charles Dickens published in 1861. That is the year in which Rabindranath Tagore was born. That is Great Expectations. You have to study Great Expectations. After Charles Dickens, there is Thomas Hardy. You have to study The Return of the Native. You have to start reading about these works, okay? And do you know which Jane Austen novel you have to study? Emma. Emma. Okay? Emma was published in 1816. Then, do you know, guys, the three sisters who wrote novels in the Victorian period? The Bronte sisters. Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte, Anne Bronte. Charlotte, Emily, Anne. The Bronte sisters. And there were also many poets at this time. Tennyson, Browning, then Arnold. Tennyson, you have to study The Lotus Eaters. Browning, you have to study My Last Duchess. Matthew Arnold, you don't have to study. The Victorian period was a very tumultuous period. In the Victorian period, India tried to get independence in the first war of independence, 1857. And at the end of the Victorian period, there was George Bernard Shaw. There was also W.B. Yeats. You don't have to study George Bernard Shaw, but you have to study another Irish writer. It is J.M. Synge. J.M. Synge, Riders to the Sea, you have to study. W.B. Yeats, Easter 1916, you have to study. And after that, there are the modern and postmodern periods. Modernism, D.H. Lawrence, T.S. Eliot, Ezra Pound, Virginia Woolf. Postmodern period also. But you don't have to study much into those later periods. Do you know, I'm going to ask you some questions to familiarize you with American literature. Do you know the 19th century writer that you have to study, who wrote very brief poems without titles and used dashes? Emily Dickinson. It is Emily Dickinson. Correct. You have to study Because I Could Not Stop for Death. Do you know the writer born in the 19th century who was a farmer in New England? He got Pulitzer Prize 4 times. He wrote Birches, Mending Wall, The Road Not Taken. It is Robert Frost. You have to study Robert Frost. Do you know who are these post-colonial writers? Okay, this is a writer from Nigeria. He wrote plays and novels. He was in exile for many years. And it is Wole Soyinka. Wole Soyinka. You have to study The Lion and the Jewel. Chinua Achebe also you have to study. You have to study Things Fall Apart. There is a Kenyan writer that you have to study. Tell me who? Who is the Kenyan writer that you have to study? Writer from Kenya. He wrote Petals of Blood, A Grain of Wheat. Ngugi wa Thiong'o. That is right. Ngugi wa Thiong'o. There is a South African writer that you have to study. This South African writer wrote July's People. July's People. This South African writer fought against the apartheid. Apartheid is the discrimination against the blacks in South Africa. Nadine Gordimer. Nadine Gordimer is correct. Who is the Indian origin Caribbean writer, Nobel laureate, who wrote very funny post-colonial novels like In Miguel Street, The Suffrage of Elvira. He wrote an India trilogy. What you have to study is A House for Mr. Biswas. You are right, it is V.S. Naipaul. V.S. Naipaul you have to study. In Indian literature, there are many poems and novels that you have to study. For example, this poem is an epic poem written in blank verse with the subtitle A Legend and a Symbol. It is written by a man over 50 years. For 50 years, he wrote this poem. It is Savitri by Sri Aurobindo. Savitri by Sri Aurobindo. There is another novel that you have to study from Indian literature where Murthy is bringing the revolution of Mahatma Gandhi into his village. Murthy is bringing Mahatma Gandhi's revolution into his village. It is Kantapura by Raja Rao. In Untouchable by Mulk Raj Anand, you see one day in the life of Baka. 1 day in the life of Baka. an untouchable boy. One day in the life of Baka. Okay, there is a poet from Kerala, my Kerala, who talks about her own life like an old theater with all its lights put out. Kamala Das, you're right, the old playhouse. The old playhouse. There is a transgender writer prescribed here. Transgender writer. Who is that? It is A. Revati. A. Revati. Yes. Then there is a novel or a non-fiction work set in Egypt, written by an Indian writer. It is In an Antique Land. In an Antique Land. Okay. That is also important. So this is how your syllabus is. Grammar, vocabulary, writing skills, reading skills, everything is there. At Vallath, we are going to schedule all this one by one. There will be lectures based on all this. There will be self-paced videos given first. And then there will be quizzes, live revision, model tests, everything. I hope YouTubers, you enjoyed the session. I'm stopping YouTube live. I will come live again a little later because another exam orientation is also going to begin. Kerala Assistant Professor exam. After that, we'll also do the regular YouTube live. So I'm stopping the live streaming. Bye-bye, YouTubers. Join our course and secure your future. Okay, bye. YouTube babies.